As if they don't have too much on their plates. The Kings of Combat Sports Podcast.
Neal.
Wait, they'll talk about the things they did that day. They'll analyze the work of Triple H. Rewind-A-SmackDown. 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 Rewind-A-SmackDown.
And welcome everybody who are listening on our free feed or watching us on YouTube to our review of WWE SmackDown. This is Ting, and I'm joined by Neal Flanagan. We are more than warmed up here with 37 minutes of talk that just took place right before this for our Café patrons, where we actually spent a lot of time talking about perhaps the big story of the day in professional wrestling, and that is the story of Dallas Edwards, the referee who suffered a brain injury at an OVW event. I assume by now a lot of you who might be listening to this podcast will have already seen this very graphic and uncomfortable scene of a referee taking a ref bump and proceeding to suffer a seizure with no medical attention, unfortunately, whatsoever. So we spent a lot of time giving our thoughts about that and talking about the latest update. We actually heard from Dallas himself on Friday night. So that is available in the Post Wrestling Cafe. We also spent a lot of time talking about MyAEW.com. This is the streaming service that AEW themselves have created and put out for mostly an international audience. But we also talk about the idea of whether or not the value, the very strong value it represents, maybe undercutting the pay-per-view pricing that they've established for audiences in this part of the world that may have usage or knowledge of usage of a VPN. So a lot of that conversation in the XL edition of this podcast, which is available to all of our patrons over at postwrestlingcafe.com. Neal, are you ready to talk about SmackDown tonight?
Of course I am, Wai, as I always am.
3 hours of SmackDown here. We're coming to you from Phoenix, Arizona. This is from, what do we got here? The Mortgage Matchup Center.
Let's go.
Phoenix, Arizona. Yes, mortgage matchups. Variable versus fixed. Who's going to win?
I hate these. I mean, it's something we all have to have these naming
prime,
rights.
subprime. It's a constant battle here. Tonight's show, according to WrestleTix, 9,780 tickets distributed. So that is down from Raw in 2005 with 14,000. So considerably lower than the last time they were here, but still close to the yearly average of about 10,798. We thank you, WrestleTix, for that information. We had a very close call, Neal, with this review of SmackDown.
What do you mean, Wai? Please.
Somewhere right before the main event, I'm talking about like the Jacob Fatu Trick Williams match. I hit save. I thought everything was okay because I just had to move some windows, and I could not find my notes anywhere in my computer. Nothing was coming up. So I thought, like, for a good second, I was gonna have to do this entire review completely blind. And part of me was actually looking forward to the challenge, but in the last minute, somehow I did a bit of hacking and managed to find it. So
I do have some notes of my own, Wai, but I'm a little less detailed than you would be about the matches, I'm sure. So yeah, I was in the middle of replying to you to say I'm going to send you my stuff if you can decipher it.
This would have been, it would have been that you would have had to lead, or I would have had to call John Paul like, hey, can you just like leave your birthday dinner and just like start do the show for me today. But thankfully we didn't have to do that. We go to Phoenix where Drew McIntyre is out. He's coming out and he's of course complaining about last week's result. He calls Nick Aldis a corporate stooge. Aldis reminds Drew of what he did to prevent Cody Rhodes from getting a fair shot at the championship. So he also says, I understand why you never gave Cody a fair shot, because the first time Cody got one, he beat you. Drew says that's bullshit, and that's when Jacob Fatu comes out to interrupt. Jacob Fatu says, what I did last week was I fixed the situation because you were never supposed to be the champion to begin with. You were only champion because of me. He says Drew has nobody to blame for what happened to him except for Jacob himself. And he asks Drew what he's going to do about it. Drew says, I'm going to quit. So I think we all know what that means. He storms out of the arena. I thought, well, what did you think about the way they had Drew McIntyre react to his title loss coming off of last week's?
Well, I think last week I said that I really want Drew not to completely like switch into he's after Jacob now and has forgotten about the title mode. So I'm glad that they had Drew furious that he's lost the title, which he's been depicted as being in love with, sleeping with, kissing before a match, all the rest of it. So to move on from that straight to Jacob would have been too much. So I kind of like this that he's so annoyed with annoyed is too mild a word. He's absolutely furious with all this about all of this. The I quit bit, well, it's like I was fully expecting to see him later in the show. We'll put it that way.
Yeah.
And I think most people were. Otherwise, you're not really setting a hook for the show. You're just having Drew walk out and with the thought that, oh well, maybe he'll be back next week or something like that. So yeah, I fully expected to see him later.
Has Drew like quit before and done this exact same thing? Like
Something very like this in 2024. I don't remember all of the details. Maybe someone in the live chat might be able to fill us in on some of the bullet points of that. But he definitely quit before a couple of years ago.
Yeah, well, it's sort of the
in a
heel.
similar situation.
Yeah, it's a bit of a heel special. I'll say I thought they did a good job in showing us Drew's natural reaction to like losing the championship on an edition of SmackDown in the run up to WrestleMania. Of course, you'd be completely pissed off. You'd be pissed off at being booked to lose the championship. And I feel like a lot of those like believable, real frustrations came out in his promo here. And I think overall, whether or not this was originally intended or not, they've done a very good job of transitioning Drew's focus to Jacob. Despite the fact that, like you said, Neil, he should be obsessed with getting his title back. He should. I believe it if he's more pissed off at Jacob Fatu at present time and wanting to attack him instead after a segment like this.
Yeah. And just a word on Jacob, I think that he has transitioned into such a tremendous promo. I mean, he fitted into the company immediately with the charisma, with the look, with the wrestling. All of that has been great. But really of late, in just recent months, they've lent on him more, given him much more mic time, given him more sort of set piece promo stuff to do. And he's knocking it out of the park, I think. He's really, really good.
Solo Sikoa is in the back with the MFTs. He's holding the Wyatt's lantern. And Solo and Tala are going to take out Rowan and Howdy tonight. And he asked Tama specifically to guard the lantern with his life. This is when Shinsuke Nakamura shows up speaking to Tama Tonga in Japanese. And we didn't really get a translation or really a sort of a back and forth in English to let us know exactly what they were talking about. I would assume something to the effect of, what are you still doing with this group? You don't need them.
There might have been a tiny bit of English in the middle. I'm almost certain I deciphered the words "be your own man" somewhere right in the middle of all of the Japanese. So it was difficult to sort of. But I was listening very hard, and I think I got that.
I have a translation here. He was saying, "This story has been going on forever. What are you still doing? This lantern really has no effect on anything. Even if you win a match, they just end up taking it back anyway. So what's the point of this storyline? Why are you here?" I think that's what he had said. So more on this a little bit later on. Solo, of course, tells Nakamura to stay away from his family. So we go to the back with Nick Aldis and Jacob Fatu. Jacob can't believe Drew quit because nobody can, really. So Trick Williams shows up and starts to trash talk Jacob Fatu. Jacob, of course, now wants to whoop Trick's ass, says he's not here to be disrespected anymore. Trick is then mad at Nick Aldis for getting, like, allowing Jacob to disrespect him, I guess. Yeah. He asks, "Where's Trips?" So Aldis makes a match between them. And the crowd is chanting, "Whoop that Trick." So,
which of course they are, because he's the charisma machine. The "Where's Trips" thing was hilarious, and the fact that these are two charisma machines, like in Fatu and Trick Williams. And Fatu says when he's going to whip his ass, like Trick is thinking, "Whoop is my thing. You can't say, you're not allowed to use that word, So, yeah, it's difficult, I think, for fans to really hate this guy. Because he's just so entertaining.
Oh, both of them, yeah. Two of the hotter, I would say rising fan favorites, certainly on SmackDown right now. So that is our main event for tonight. Then we go to our match. It's Tala Tonga Solo Sikoa taking on Uncle Howdy and Eric Rowan for, well, the Lantern. Okay, so we got Solo Sikoa going for Sister Abigail. This is when Uncle Howdy reverses. He gives Rowan the hot tag, and Rowan is in with Tala as he dominates. Solo then blind tags, and the splash is blocked by, I believe, Howdy's knees. They get into near falls with the two monsters taking each other out on the floor. This is when the rest of the MFTs and the Wyatts get into it on the floor, and Tama gets involved in the brawl, leading to Nikki Cross being free to take away the lantern. Solo is distracted by Nikki taking the lantern, which allows Uncle Howdy to hit Sister Abigail for the victory. But as usual, it does not matter who wins these matches because Tama delivers cutthroat to Howdy as he's celebrating in the ring with the lantern, and he takes the lantern back, which means this storyline will, of course, continue. Your thoughts on all of this?
I cannot stand it. I'm so bored of it. It's so endless. This, we get Tessitore talking about the spiritual beacon and how much it means and all the rest. All this mumbo jumbo bullshit. And I allowed myself to think for just a moment when Nikki Cross grabbed the lantern and began to sort of like do what would be sensible and like go to the back. Maybe they're just moving on from this. But no, she hands it to Uncle Howdy, who gets into the ring while all the enemies are still there. And of course, it's taken away from him by Tama. And so, yes, as you say, Wai, this feud will continue, and I am not here for it. Something else to fill up the time on SmackDown in the run-up to WrestleMania would be nice, I think, rather than this.
I think one of these factions needs to invest in a set of handcuffs or like zip ties or something, and just like grab the thing, lock it to your wrist, and have it be it. Yeah. It's I think at this point it's kind of silly. I don't know. I don't think the matches or like the promos have really been kind of letting the world on fire either. The fact that they're just continuing to do this sort of like you take it, I take it back type of thing makes the matches feel completely moot. And
this was a non-title match to begin with, and like you said, Wai, like we a lot of Tala and Rowan, the two bigger guys, and doing big guy spots, which I don't know. It's a matter of taste, I guess, but it's not for me. I found this very boring, patterned kind of match as well. So the in-ring stuff wasn't great either.
Priest and Truth are in the back. They are, of course, #1 contenders for the tag team titles that the MFTs currently hold. So they're watching the match. Truth makes the mistake that the MFTs are the Judgment Day, and he calls him JC McDonough. He also calls Dominic Mysterio. So, Los Garza come in. They did most of the work in they did most of the work in last week's gauntlet match that Truth and Priest ended up capitalizing on. So Priest says, let's have a match tonight. So they're going to wrestle. James and Julia are in the back. They play this like pre-recorded promo where they're talking about somebody. And we don't really know because the first portion of this segment is cut off by a Cricket 5G plug. So we don't know who they're actually referring to for 90% of this promo. And not until the end, when James says something about like Tiffy time, do we realize, oh, they were talking about Tiffany Stratton. So
yeah, I did wonder would this something to do with us watching it on the international feed, because they mute a lot of the US specific promo talk from the desk.
I heard the audio on the cricket ad.
Okay, so you got
It was not an ad even. It was them talking about the front row, the people who got front row tickets.
The front row people, yeah. So for me, it began with Julia saying, you can't beat Kiana tonight, let alone me, while pointing at her belt or something. So as you say, without identifying who they were talking about.
It's just a poor transition. Somebody maybe jumping the gun with the playing of the promo, perhaps. So Julia says you can't even beat Kiana tonight, so you can't beat me. So they're building to Tiffany Stratton versus Julia for the U.S. Championship. We then get Jade Cargill versus Michin. This is a feud that I guess has been built you could say, for months now. Because
Well,
Jade Cargill has no other opponents other than Michin throughout the course of this run.
they've had Michin and BFAB show up in Jade's face backstage for a few weeks. When Michin swinging her kendo stick around. But they did a lot more work tonight on the commentary desk trying to put this over as we got some footage from 3 months ago with Jade and Michin, and we were told by Tessitore that that Jade had intentionally injured Michin on the holiday tour as well. Now, none of this has been referenced in recent weeks. So they would have, I mean, they could have if they thought, let's do some sort of build to this match rather than just these people popping up backstage. So yeah, that kind of rubbed me the wrong way slightly.
It's a very quickly put together match, but you certainly get the sense coming off of this that this was just meant as an introduction for the next chapter in Michin storyline, BFAB storyline, maybe even an attachment to Jade as well, which we will touch on. But first, the match itself. Michin starts off attacking from behind, so they get to a really hot pace to start. Jade controls and slows things down. She hits the fallaway slam on the floor, which takes us to commercial break. Michin escapes Jaded with a stunner. She goes for a tornado DDT and almost slips, but does complete the move. Her eat defeat is countered as Michin instead goes for the sliced bread. She comes back, successfully hitting the eat defeat this time, but Jade ricochets off onto the floor. Jade then comes back, powerbombs Michin against the barricade. She goes back to the ring, licks her face and delivers the chokeslam, and then hits Jaded for the victory. Your thoughts on the match, Neil?
Just before I give my thoughts, Wai, I'm copying you.
Oh, lovely. Thank you.
For our viewers, there's a light show, some confetti,
Thank you.
fireworks. Why, you ask? Because it's after midnight in Eastern time, and that means it is March 14th, 2026, which also means happy birthday, Ting.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, Neil. You timed this perfectly. Did you have an alarm set off in the background for
No alarm.
midnight?
I just noticed the time, and I happen to know I'm only 4 hours ahead of you at the moment rather than 5, which means a lovely early night for me, Wai. But I knew that means it's the 14th.
Thank you very much, Neil. Yes, 42 years young. And I wouldn't spend it doing anything else but talking about Michin versus Jade Cargill in our review of SmackDown.
Of
So thank
course
you.
not.
Appreciate
And I know that's your way of telling me to get right back to this match, which was a solid enough encounter, but I felt that Michin got way, way, way too much offense in this. And, it probably plays more into something that you predicted, that we get some backstage about later on, where Michin's pissed off that, she nearly won or whatever. But at a standalone match, I felt that the world champion should not be taken to the limit by someone who commentary or keep telling us has been on the shelf for 3 months and this is their first match back. So this to me made very little sense, that Michin would have so much offense in here and near falls galore and all the rest of it on our WWE Women's Champion. So from that point of view, the booking for me didn't make any sense.
I personally didn't have an issue with that at all. In fact, I felt it was important to make Michin look strong, because coming into this match, your feeling is that Michin should not even be in the same ring as Jade Cargill. So I think she needed to look better than she did against Jade in previous encounters. Beyond that, I felt like Michin brought about at least maybe a more enhanced version of her style here, where she kept the pace really fast and was very aggressive right off the bat attacking, and she kept that up the entire way. And you even had acknowledgement from Rhea Ripley later on. I really liked your, whatever she said, increase in aggression or something like that.
Yes.
And I thought that was very apparent and very notable, and made Michin at least feel like she had a bit of a fresh coat of paint and a bit more of a determination than she did previously. And I thought all of that was important, because clearly the expectation is that you're going to get Michin involved in Jade Cargill's build with Rhea Ripley. So you needed her to look strong in this match.
That I do agree with. Where I differ slightly is that why couldn't we have a few weeks of Michin destroying whoever, Candice LeRae, who else is out there? I know that the mid card of the SmackDown roster isn't exactly stacked at the moment, but I just felt this came out of absolutely zero, absolutely nowhere. That we were told she's been injured for 3 months, it's her first match back, and suddenly, we have this. But I take your point. It builds her into a threat for what comes next, which I think we'll get to that. But hats off to you, Wade, because you don't have your hat on tonight, because it sounds like your prediction for where we're headed with Jade, Michin, and BFAB sounds like looks like it's going to be correct.
I'm hardly the only person who probably suggested that, so I don't need any victory on your lefts with something like that. But thank you, Neil. We'll see. Might not necessarily come true. What I hope does come true though is that we get more Sami Zayn, Cody Rhodes interactions. Because Nick Aldis is in the back with Cody. Cody wants to know what's up with Drew. Aldis tells him to just focus on the contract. So Aldis walks out of frame, which means Sami Zayn walks in. And immediately I'm salivating at the interaction these two will have and how this, on the surface, friendly conversation is about to break down. Look at Cody in his glasses here. What do you think?
I love the beginning of this, and Sammy's face, all earnest, innocent as usual, and he's saying, look, right, this week, we don't want it. It's not going to become a thing,
Yeah.
Here to say congratulations. I'm rooting for you, but what is coming, and I'm here for it.
Zayn says, I don't want any trouble. And of course, he's going to bring trouble. He just wants to say congrats. Cody knows. Cody says, yeah, okay, great. But I know you said the same thing to Randy Orton. Cody asks why Sami is doing all of this, because Cody can feel there's going to be tension in the air. Sami, are you just doing all of this because you want a title shot? And this is enough to set Sami Zayn off. He gets pissed off. He says, I can't believe you think so lowly of me, that you think I'm politicking here for a title shot. He says, I said what I said to Randy, because I look up to Randy, and I don't look up to you. But why? Why? Because we're supposed to be friends. Do you remember? We're supposed to be equals. So you don't get to talk down to me like that. Cody says he spent all week doing media talking Sami up. So he says he actually does look up to Sami and he's inspired by him. But it's cool if Sami doesn't. All Sami needs to do is look at the title on his shoulder. And of course, the camera zooms out and this poor solo cup and these poor empty bottles of water just get destroyed by Sami Zayn here. Power slapped by Zayn out of existence. What did you think about this week's Cody Sami interaction?
Tremendous. It's becoming my favorite part of SmackDown, and that's a low bar with some of the booking we get on this show. But when I see Sami, coming in to have a calm conversation with either, especially with Cody, I'm strapping in.
These are my highlights.
Water bottles flying.
Oh my god. I mean, obviously, like at this point, like the water bottle slapping is just almost like sort of a comedic sort of like exclamation point to it all, right? But nothing about this is comedic at all. Like it's just that last part, which I love, right? But everything prior to it, I think is some really great, like serious tension building, and role play, I suppose, like scene acting, whatever you want to call it, from two people who are just like great at starting from 0 and ramping it up to 15 every single time. Yep. Yeah, I love these interactions. And of course, it ends with Zelina and Aleister Black, who come in, and Black asking Zayn if he's considered whether or not he's meant to chase the championship. And actually, this was the thing that prompted the water throwing, I think, right? Or did the water throwing come?
I think that was first. Sami throws the water bottles first. Then you hear cackling from Zelina, and she comes in. Sami says, you need to stay far away from me. So I think he's maybe going to have to go through Aleister before.
Oh, we'll see. That seems to be his involvement tonight. All right. So then we get up next, the Irresistible Forces. They're taking on Charlotte and Alexa. But first, we are met with the returning Bella Twins. Were you wondering when the Bella Twins would be coming back?
I was wondering when we might see them. You know, I felt that they would probably pop up in the road to WrestleMania. I'm kind of surprised they weren't promoted. I mean, there's very little promoted for this episode in general.
Yeah.
This appearance, particularly given, I mean, they don't live there now, but it's kind of, you know, a place that's tied closely to them.
They were raised in Scottsdale, which is close by. So
Yeah.
they consider Phoenix the hometown. But this was especially fascinating given that Nikki and Brie were on the Untraditionally Lala podcast today. I know you're a subscriber, Neil. Do you listen to the
a huge fan. I've never heard of it.
uncontrollably untraditionally, trying to see like what this even is. Untraditionally Lala. Lala lures you in with her. You've seen Lala Kent cry, laugh, and even scream for 8 seasons as she broke all the Vanderpump rules. Now she sits and sometimes bends her own rules on her new podcast, Untraditionally Lala. Okay, so there you go. I'm sure Brandon from New Jersey subscribes to this.
I'm a massive fan, I hear, yeah.
The Bellas were on the Untraditionally Lala podcast released earlier today where Brie said, I came back at the end of January and I just assumed, oh, you're going to have me back every Monday. But they're like, okay, we'll let you know when you're needed back in the story. I'm like, it's been 5 weeks. So this caught some headlines throughout the day in people wondering when the Bellas would be back. Obviously, I wonder if at the time that she recorded this interview, she knew that she was set to appear on this Phoenix edition of SmackDown. So she was either working then, or maybe this happened to be somewhat coincidental. But it did drum up a lot of reaction to perhaps, well, maybe supporters, but also a lot of people vocal about how they're fine, perfectly fine not being able to see the Bellas. Nonetheless, they seem to be firmly at this point inserted into the road to WrestleMania. So Nikki and Brie speak. They say that they are here to scout because they are next in line for the tag team championships. Now, on what grounds? They don't say whatsoever. They just say like thank you, Nick Aldis, for giving them a tag title shot.
Yeah. It feels like they just asked Nick and he said okay. And wait,
Yeah.
can I rewind just a moment before
Sure.
we continue with this? I think just before this was the BFAB Michin and Rhea segment, where Rhea is backstage with Michin and BFAB, congratulates Michin on her her intensity and all the rest of it, but Michin doesn't want any kind of pity party. And BFAB sort of puts her arm around Michin and takes her away, and we begin to see, I think, the beginnings of something there again that you talked about. There's just some tension between Rhea and these two.
Yes, that's right. And yes, seems to indicate that, all the Jade stuff was there to as some sort of like launching point for something else with Michin. And that Michin and BFAB seem to have a role, in the Rhea versus Jade build leading to all of this. And we should probably mention this now, but later on in a background interaction, you can see BFAB talking to Jade. So one of your Paula Beck Easter eggs being dropped there for potential storyline connection later on. Back to this match though. So Nikki and Brie say that they're just given a title shot and they never say why. Now, coming off of like their post Rumble interaction, I mean I feel like the decision was already there, like in Philly, to tell them that they should be turning this group heel. In Phoenix, they got a good reaction, but by doing things like giving them title shots with no justification whatsoever, they're certainly not endearing them to the audience that already might feel this is not a group that deserves even to be on WrestleMania. But I wonder at this point if the booking is intentional to get people to boo them, or if they're just like doing things that are going to want to make people hate them.
Yeah, it's interesting. It was not an overtly babyface thing, apart from sort of the hometown kind of reference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we'll see. It almost felt a little rushed to me.
Very rushed.
Perhaps that they weren't originally booked for the show. They certainly weren't promoted for the show, as I've already mentioned, and inserting them into all of this. Yeah. It doesn't feel like it's been a long-term play, that's for sure.
So we get to the match itself. It is Charlotte versus the Irresistible Forces for the Tag Team Championships. The Annihilator misses here. Charlotte then delivers the moonsault, but Lash is able to break that up. Charlotte and Nia brawl near the Bellas on the outside. Nia pulls Nikki in the way of a Charlotte big boot, which lays Nikki out. Nia then straight up shoves Brie down onto the floor. Back in the ring, the natural selection is delivered to Nia. Alexa is about to hit the Twisted Bliss, but Brie comes in attacking Nia Jax. This leads to a DQ, and everybody is shoving each other, including Alexa and Brie. So everybody is brawling at this point. The Irresistible Forces delivered an elevated leg drop to Nikki. The Vegomatic by the Midnight Express. This seems to indicate some sort of three-way program involving all of them, probably in the lead up to WrestleMania. I thought the match itself was actually going quite well in delivering like a very vocal reaction for Charlotte and Alexa. And I thought the match was helped by, I think, a pretty good heightened pace of action, like we saw with Michin and Jade prior to this. But what do you think about the match itself and also getting the Bellas involved in here?
Thought the match was pretty good as well. No, if I'm right, this match wasn't promoted for the show either.
It was.
It was. So, okay, so I'm not right. So we'll gloss over that. But it was a solid match. As soon as the Bellas came out at the beginning and were sitting ringside, though, you knew something was happening here. You know, they weren't on commentary even, so they're not behind the desk. They're just sitting there. There was going to be some involvement. And so a clean finish didn't seem to be in the cards for this match, really, from that moment. But all told, I thought it was a good match. And I am beginning to really like Lash and Nia. And I like them together anyway. I think they've got chemistry. I think that their backstage segments are, for what they're given at least to do, pretty good. They're good together. And as a team, I think they work really well also. Yeah, I'm quite impressed by them. And Lash is coming along nicely, you know, because out of the four in this match, she's clearly the greenest, but seems to be progressing.
Question shall remain of whether or not it, you know, if they are heading to a multi-person match at WrestleMania, if it's just going to be these three teams, or if they might include another team. You know, Slim Sieber here mentioning Bayley and Lyra, of course, maybe, you know, needing WrestleMania plans as well. So we shall see what the direction is there. Truth and Priest taking on Jelly Roll. Sorry, Truth and Priest are with Jelly Roll in the back. Truth, of course, calls him Sushi Roll. Jelly Roll then runs into his boy, Randy Orton, in the back. Orton congratulates him on winning 3 Grammys. And Orton tells Jelly to whoop Miz's ass on Miz TV if he ends up talking too much. We go to the back with Charlexa. They're pissed off at the Bellas, so they argue with them. Nikki and Brie say that they weren't just about to not do anything, you know, to Nia. And they remind Charlexa that they are next up for the tag titles. So that is the match next week on SmackDown, which we can almost safely assume that Charlexa will get involved in causing a disqualification for. Priest and Truth take on Los Garza in a match stemming off of the last week's gauntlet. So Garza's hit simultaneous Orihara moonsaults as we go to commercial break. Priest comes in to save Truth, who is selling throughout the commercial, and then he decides to tag R-Truth in for the finish, and they do their double thunderclap, leading to double AA and South of Heaven combo to win. Just as I guess another way to continue to build your next number one contenders.
Yeah, I think this is a way to get these two rather, you know, bigger names, particularly Priest, probably into WrestleMania. You know, these, I don't know quite whether the extra hour at the beginning of each WrestleMania night that's going to be shown on ESPN2 on Saturday and ESPN proper on the Sunday are extra time, or, you know, 1 hour of maybe a 4-hour show, for example. And we know there'll be lots of advertising and so on during that television portion of it. But it feels like this is the sort of match that might fit into that section for me. That's just something that crossed my mind is, you know, if they want to get some of their upper mid card or lower high card or however you might categorize Damian Priest at this point, these tag titles seem to be a way to do that. So I think they'll probably hold on to them for a bit. The match itself here was pretty solid. You know, I like Los Garza. I think they're good. They're again. I went on about this a bit, probably too long last week, but I do enjoy seeing proper tag teams doing proper cooperative tag moves, and you know, some of their, you know, stereo moonsaults and all of these things really looked good.
In the back, Alex Shelley is with Johnny Gargano, who is back on a crate this week. He tells Candice, maybe you guys just have to go back to simplicity and go back to Johnny wrestling, whatever that means. So they're off to do their thing, counting the days until I think their contracts run out. But in walks Chris Sabin, who is still mad that Shelley is wasting his time with Johnny Gargano. And Sabin tells Shelley that he got them a match next week against Fraxium, and tells Shelley to prove that he's still committed to the team. And this is, of course, where we see BFAB and Jade in the background. I've been liking just simply the indication that we're getting some sort of character development here from the Motor City Machine Guns, who for the entire past year are just this sort of, like, in my opinion, generic good wrestling team. Like, they are just portrayed as just these guys who like pump their fists, raise their fists, right? And they come out and have good matches, and that's all you really know about them. And that's okay to introduce somebody with, but for a whole year of like non-tension development, I've not been impressed. So
we haven't even had the good wrestling matches, though.
True. Yep.
They've just been hanging around backstage, listening to R-Truth teach us how to use the ESPN app or look at Johnny planking or whatever. It's, so yeah, I agree with you, Wai, that like anything for these guys, I will take. There is, of course, the usual professional wrestling trope here that these guys have not spoken in a week. Since they were backstage at SmackDown last week, because the first thing Alex Shelley says is, he's ready for his apology. So you watched the replay, that I did try to help. Where's my hug, sort of thing. Sabin's having none of it. So it's as though they do. This is the first time they're speaking. They don't text. They don't any of that.
I think wrestlers are all banned from talking to each other unless there's a camera in their face backstage. Yeah, that's what we're led to believe.
I will say, character development, as limited as it is, very, very welcome. A match with Fraxium next week. Yeah, sign me up. I'm happy with that.
So we go to Danhausen and the Miz in the back. Danhausen gives him a shirt to wear for Miz TV. Miz says no, and doesn't like the fact that Danhausen got a shirt in his first week. And Danhausen says, I actually got it on my first day. So the Miz keeps saying no to Danhausen's ideas, like replacing him as Miz TV host. So Danhausen curses the Miz. We go up next to Miz TV with Jelly Roll. Jelly wasn't going to miss his friends Cody and Orton signing their contract tonight. So Miz, of course, offers to be Jelly Roll's mentor. And Jelly Roll says no. He knows that Miz has a history of stabbing his mentees in the back. Miz brings up Jelly Roll not being able to stand back up after doing that one spot at SummerSlam 2 years ago, which was, of course, profiled on Unreal. And if people don't remember, it was SummerSlam 2004, one of the nights of SummerSlam. I think, was that a 2-night event? I don't remember. Maybe it wasn't 2 nights.
I don't think so. I think last year was the first.
Anyway, Miz and Truth were in there as Awesome Truth, and they were doing a spot with Jelly Roll, where Jelly Roll did a choke slam, and he fell down off of doing the choke slam and had trouble getting back up. This was when Jelly Roll was much bigger. So Jelly Roll in Unreal says seeing this was what motivated him to lose all that weight. So the Miz says, I'm responsible for basically helping you lose all that weight. And Jelly comes back cutting a big promo saying that he was the one who did all the hard work losing 250 pounds, and how dare you take that credit. So Miz says he liked Jelly more when he was fat. Jelly says, fat or skinny, I'm going to whip your ass, and calls him a locker room loser. This is when Kit Wilson shows up. And I don't know if you caught this, but like he shows up and Wade says, yes, boy. And then he corrects himself and Wade says, yes, that was the old one. Yes, they, them. Is seemed like... And I thought like Wilson would play this up as like some sort of new wrinkle attached to the gimmick where like he now refers to himself as they, them. But it didn't come. And so was this just like Wade sort of like way
I don't know whether this is Wade winging it. Someone in the back thinking it would be funny and feeding it into his ear in the moment.
Now,
but it was
how do you
clearly a
feel?
deliberate line because he's saying, yes, boy. which was their old catchphrase.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know. I mean, and I don't watch main events. So if there's promos on there where perhaps he's been saying this, that's possible, but I kind of doubt it. I think we might have heard about it. I'll say it didn't raise a giggle with me. You could call me an old stick in the mud or whatever, but I think this sort of, it's a cheap joke about pronouns that I don't really care for.
I think the whole gimmick the entire time has been sort of riding that line of like, a parody of, just like somebody who's very sensitive to these sort of issues. It's kind of cooled off on that to just a guy who just like kind of like, complains about toxicity in whatever form that it exists. Maybe this might be, like verging on a bit more of a sensitive topic to many people, that might still be looking, to be taken seriously, by like being referred to by chosen pronouns. But this sort of gave me a little bit of pause, but it didn't seem like it was something that Wilson himself in this promo was trying to hammer home. So it might have just been like, an offhanded comment from Wade. But Wilson does start his promo off by saying, "The problem isn't you, Miz. The problem is him." And I thought, oh, okay, this is where he's going to get into it. But no, he says he's strictly referring to Jelly Roll and says, that he's the problem. Jelly says, "We all secretly like you, Kit Wilson," and the audience actually cheers it. He even does the pose. Wilson says Jelly is mocking him, and he is running away from what he truly is. And that's somebody who is fat phobic. He's saying he promotes an unhealthy beauty standard and that he is toxic. So at this point, Wilson pushes him. Jelly comes back with a punch, but Wilson moves out of the way, and instead, Jelly nails the Miz. So what is our direction here for WrestleMania? Yeah.
I'm not sure. I think probably Jelly Roll is going to... Last week, just to stop and restart, last week I said I think we get Jelly Roll in some sort of interaction like this that we had tonight at WrestleMania, and that might be all. I've now revised that expectation completely. I think we're going to get a match. Mm-hmm. And could it be a tag match of some kind? I don't know who would be with Jelly Roll here. So if it's singles, it's probably the Miz, but
well, what about Danhausen? Of course, like we don't know if Danhausen is even supposed to wrestle at all. But and like would that be enough? First of all, on in terms of marquee value. Secondly, in terms of like in-ring capability, having Danhausen and Jelly Roll represent one entire side of an equation.
It might. Danhausen can wrestle, and in a very limited way, they'll be able. The others, in a cooperative way with Jelly Roll, will be able to do something with him. He doesn't. If it's a tag, that would be my expectation, is a tag match.
Yeah.
So Jelly Roll with another. Yeah. Danhausen I hadn't thought of, but of course he's, in retrospect, he does feel like the obvious other person who's in this in these four guys, at least in the way we see them interconnected on television.
Yeah. I will say, though, I think it would be like putting a lot of responsibility on Danhausen being the experience in that match to, like carry the team, for with still a very limited Jelly Roll on the other end.
Yeah.
So I almost feel like maybe a safer bet would be like Danhausen being attached to the program, certainly helping build it, maybe even managing like the babyface team. He might even end up managing the Miz, but somehow ending up, costing him the match in the process. But I can also see them putting somebody maybe you might consider more dependable, more capable, more, like maybe known for their in-ring ability with the Jelly Roll. So maybe.
Yeah, I wonder who that would be at this point, and no one else has really been involved with Kit on a regular
Cruz
basis.
is like me. Like
Apollo
you have a
Cruz,
lot
I'm
of
sure
guys.
Would be me.
Johnny Gargano, like please, I'm still here.
Yeah, but there's nobody particularly obvious who's also tied to this at the minute. But of course, they've another 5 weeks to do that. So yeah, I think we're headed for something at WrestleMania.
Right.
And they need their novelty match. So I mean, it could be terrible. It won't really matter.
Well, speaking of Apollo Crews, he shows up on the show.
2 seconds or so.
Simply to laugh at the Miz watching in the back, and then he goes away, and that's all we ever see of him. Because the real scene is, of course, Carmelo Hayes coming in to talk to Ilya Dragunov again, and I guess Hayes is like on this crusade of like really wanting like to face Dragunov again, and Dragunov is having this sort of issue with himself where he does not feel worthy of the championship. So, Carmelo says, maybe this U.S. Open Challenge is too much of a burden for you, Ilya. And Ilya gets into this whole thing. I wish John was here to do an impression, but because I won't even attempt to do it justice. He basically says like, pain is the only way I know how to live because I don't know peace. Melo says he senses that there's something more to him avoiding him. And Dragunov says, I can't fight you when I'm fighting myself.
Yeah. Another guy somewhat in the Sami mold who can go from like 0 to 100 emotion-wise. Look at his face here. In 0 seconds. Yes, I can't fight you without fighting myself. I don't quite get what's happening with Ilya. This all seems to be, sort of tied back to his childhood, his relationship with his mom.
It's coming
the
off
idea
of
that he can't enter this weekly, apart from this week, US Open Challenge, because of all of this feels a little extreme.
It's coming off of a string of like I suppose you can consider like failures with him, like in losing the championship, not being able to. I guess I'm sure he's taken maybe another loss or something. They are trying to tell like a nice, deep character like analysis here of Dragonov. It just doesn't feel like this is the type of show meant for that sort of thing, or at least like the supporting material doesn't really feel like it's complete enough for us to really sink our teeth into the story just yet. But I do like the direction. Are you interested in this, and where do you see this match taking place?
I'm more interested in this than quite a bit else that I see on the show, like the Gargano being wheeled around on an equipment case, etc. So it's something, and it's something they're trying to do week to week. If they could flesh this out a little bit more, just a wee bit more of the motivation of why Ilya is so screwed up in the head about all of this, then I think it would be better. But it's something.
So Tiffany Stratton is in the back. This is when Chelsea tries to interrupt her promo, and Stratton just shoves her, wheels her out of the way. She then cuts a promo on Julia via walk and talk as she heads to the ring. And then we have some celebrities in the house tonight. Vanessa Hudgens, a huge professional wrestling fan, and also Mark Kerr, the Smashing Machine himself. The Miz and Wilson are in the back. Wilson is going to talk to Nick Aldis about Jelly Roll. So here comes Danhausen to say that he could have defended The Miz. Instead, he did not. He tells The Miz that there's one thing he could do to reverse the curse. So what is that? What, to be Miz's mentor? That's right.
He did. I think so, yeah. I mean, he disappears before Miz can get a proper answer out of him. But yeah, I think it's to be his mentor.
All right. So Stratton is versus Kiana James is our matchup next. Julia distracts on the outside, leading to James dominating throughout the break. But out come Chelsea Green and Alba Fire. Stratton is about to deliver the prettiest moonsault ever, but Julia drags James out of the ring. Tiffany then instead hits her with the tope suicida. Chelsea is about to attack Stratton with a wrench, but Julia stops her because she does not want a DQ. Julia then gets on the apron, where James kicks her by accident, setting her onto Chelsea and Alba Fire. Stratton then hits the PME to win the match. What did you think of all of this?
Not a lot. I mean, really, from Chelsea with the pink wrench or whatever it was, to being knocked back into the chair, to the confusion, to the PME. I mean, we haven't really seen much of Tiffany lately, so just this felt like it's out of absolutely the blue sky that she is now after the United States title, and the way to get there with this wasn't awesome. I think I'm putting it mildly, but it's the right results. She's beaten Kiana James, so she's gone through her. So what's next seems to be a title program with Julia, one of the very few she's had.
Yeah. I like the matchup. I mean, I like the placement. It makes perfect sense, you know, like for Stratton, if she's not going to be involved in the title picture, to go for, you know, the US. Yeah, sure. But I agree. I didn't think like the build up to this match was all that sort of like, you know, well indicated, perhaps, like in the lead up to it, and therefore you're talking about characters at this point that I don't think are all that interesting. So they do have like 5 weeks to go, so we'll see how they can ramp this up. The match itself, I thought these two were, I mean, very athletic. You know, you're talking about two high level gymnasts here.
Yeah.
I did not think the match was, though, the cleanest in terms of like wrestling execution, and it had a finish that was very overbooked, and even that was not so well executed as well. You're also talking about a crowd that at this point was sounding to me a little bit tired by this point in the show. Next week, we've got the Bellas versus the Irresistible Forces. We've got Kit Wilson versus Jelly Roll, and I believe they announced, was it
It's Kid Wilson
calling out Jelly Roll? Sorry.
Yeah.
And then what else did they announce? Something else?
Something
afterwards?
comes later. It's but I've forgotten.
We'll get to it, everybody. Okay, so we've got Trick with Kathy in the back. Trick says all this needs to do his job. So they are building up some sort of a lot of tension between Trick and Aldis here, similar to, I guess, what Heyman and Pierce are doing on Raw. So there you go. Sami Zayn walks in. Thought we had our Sami Zayn moment on the show. It's not just a bonus Sami Zayn interaction here. He shows up in the back with Trick Williams, and he's there to essentially make fun or taunt Trick Williams for not exactly being the most successful guy lately. Mr. Can't get the job done. So he knows Trick's feeling right now that he's embarrassed, and he should be. Trick says Sami is lucky that he's wrestling tonight, or else he would drop him. Zayn says he's not hard to find every week, so we're looks like we're getting some Trick and Sami. Do you think this is Mania or television?
I'm interested because, I mean, we seem to be earlier setting up something to do with Sami and Aleister Black. And now this is a very obvious direction with Sami and Trick Williams. And I don't think they want to beat Trick Williams, but at the same time, they're obviously trying to raise Sami's stock as well. So I'm a little bit confused as to where we're headed with all of this. But I love this iteration of Sami, like we were talking about earlier on, and these two together, I think, you know, you're raising the stock of Sami in a way, because Trick is a bit of a crowd favorite at the moment.
We go to our match, which is our main event: Jacob Fatu versus Trick Williams. Two fan favorites here. The crowd certainly seems to like them both. You get a lot of equal back and forth, I would say. Drew then, of course, comes in. He has, not quit after all. He comes in from the crowd, and he attacks Jacob on the floor behind the ref's back. Trick then hits two Trick shots, and Trick gets the victory here. I would say a pretty predictable, but ultimately effective looking finish here. What did you think about the match and the directions that we're heading in coming off of this?
Up to the interference, yeah, the match wasn't bad at all. And it has reminded me of the other match that we're getting next week, is because all this is, I get,
Right.
we'll get to it, but there is another match for next week. Yeah, somewhat predictable. I thought, this point in the show, Jacob being in this match, I thought, oh, here we go. Drew's going to return, and we're going to get some sort of interference. And yes, of course, that's exactly what happened. So.
So our real main event, of course, is the Cody and Randy Orton contract signing here. All this says, first of all, Fatu and McIntyre will be the match next week on SmackDown, so that completes our, at least, announcements for next week. So we'll see how doing the match next week will potentially take us to another match involving them on SmackDown.
Yeah.
Or could the direction be a multi-person involving, well, I guess who else would be attached? Or Trick? Sami? Could they all be rolled into one, or would you see rematch with a stipulation, something like that?
I think all of those things are possible. My instinct was immediately that this match doesn't really get out of the starting blocks next week because of one reason or another, or interference or something like that. Because it feels much more like the destination rather than a stepping point on the way to something else.
Yeah, agreed. So Cody and Orton, they're doing their contract signing, and all this, well, sorry, Cody talks about having his first WWE match against Randy in 2007. And he says he saw him then win the Rumble in the main event of WrestleMania. Talks about leaving and coming back when he didn't have anybody, including his wife and brother, but he had Randy Orton. So he says he knows he's not Randy's son or brother, but he was always proud to be his boy. And then they both sign the contract. Orton looks, somewhat like emotional coming off of this. Orton then grabs the mic and he says this was not supposed to be hard. This was supposed to be Drew McIntyre sitting in that seat. Cody then interrupts and says he wants to try to make it easier for Randy. He says he knows he will get the best of Randy Orton when the bell rings at WrestleMania, but he also says when the match is over, I will always love you. He starts singing, the like Whitney Houston song to him. It was weird. Orton signs, hugs Cody, and then slams his head into the table. He low blows him. He then rips Cody's shirt apart. The announcers ask what Orton's doing. Orton proceeds to attack Cody with the steel steps, busting him open. Orton shoves Aldis. Some stunned reactions from the crowd, but, of course, these are immediately also met with Randy, Randy, Randy chants. Yeah. Jelly Roll even comes in. He's trying to stop him, and Orton even shoves Jelly Roll down. So Orton places Cody's head between the steps, or at least the inner angle of the steps and the table. And then Orton proceeds to come back later with a steel chair, smashing Cody's head against these steps. Very safe, but, very nicely done angle here. So it is Orton, being way more vicious than we've seen him in many, many years at this point. And what did you take from this? How did you interpret this? Was this an actual heel turn? How did you read all of this?
I think it's a heel turn. I think it's Randy is giving into the voices in his head, which he's been teasing for several weeks. It was a weird moment for it to happen, like Cody telling him he'll always love him, and he wants the legend killer at WrestleMania, and something that makes him snap. That is weird, and we do get some close-ups of Randy looking somewhat conflicted after all of this. But in the end, a very eventful heel turn, and something that frankly woke me up quite a lot from a very mid episode of SmackDown, a very badly, I thought, paced episode of SmackDown as well, right up to the entrances of these two guys, which were the full Monty for both of them. And while I'm on that subject, even like R-Truth, we got most of his rap. This entire episode was paced very slowly, I felt. But this was quite something at the end. We got blood. We got a full-on heel turn, real viciousness from Randy. So, it'll be interesting to see in the coming weeks whether... Do we get a regression? Do we get the voices stopping and telling him he did wrong, or do we just get a complete continuation of this like psycho version of Randy Orton? I think that might be interesting. The other interesting thing for me was the crowd reaction that you mentioned. I think they did everything they could, from the viciousness to the attack on Jelly Roll. Not so much the shoving of Nick Aldis. People wouldn't really care about that, but I think they did a lot to try and get the crowd to boo. And many of them did, but many of them were chanting Randy's name also.
The show kind of ended with Randy, Randy, Randy chants. And really, at this stage of like wrestling promotion, I have to think they expected some of this reaction, right? Yeah. First of all, you're looking at the the matchup itself. Randy Orton versus Cody Rhodes. Randy Orton is universally loved. Cody has already kind of been like, having to fend off some negative sentiment attached to him. And so, like, I have to think they would have expected all of this. And so I'm kind of left, watching this segment, not necessarily feeling like we got to see a full-on heel turn. Like, especially in the way this segment was kind of set up. I mean, you had Cody essentially saying, I know I'm going to see, the Randy Orton that was the youngest WWE champion of all time. The Randy Orton that, was essentially at his best. And we all know what that means. A Randy Orton that is at his best is a heel Randy Orton who does shit like this. And so Randy, coupled with by saying, it wasn't supposed to be this hard, shaking Cody's hand before proceeding to attack him and low blow him in very vicious manner, might I add. It all just feels like it's exactly what Cody wants. It's what Cody asked for, and it feels more like this is Randy obliging by doing what his opponent has asked of him, by unleashing his full self, his full natural self, and no longer holding back, and almost doing it in a way that could be perceived as respectful for his opponent, because he wants to give his opponent his best, and that means doing this to him. So, like, to me, I'm watching this as a somebody who's trying to interpret whether or not this was like Randy Orton actually being heel or not. And I don't necessarily sense that it was. I just sense this was Randy being his best at the request of Cody Rhodes.
It's an interesting takeaway, and I think it'll be really interesting to see whether they carry that through next week. And I think they could do that successfully. The reason I lent somewhat more towards this is a conventional heel turn, and yes, Randy has always had that in him, was the extremity of all of this, the busted open, the attack with the chair, which, we did everything but have Cody like stretchered out. And I think to some extent that just felt a bit extreme rather than just RKOing him or something like that, which is, I think, what a lot of people would have maybe thought we'd get. That would be Randy just healing it up, but in a way that's very expected and somewhat in character. This felt like a full-on kind of turn to the dark side.
But RKOing somebody is what he does in the opening segment of the show to like a Trick Williams or like whoever, right? For WrestleMania level main event, I think the Randy Orton character, even as a babyface, would need to tap into this. And therefore I feel like there's some sort of justification, even as a babyface, that he would do this. But it does remain very interesting how Cody Rhodes will react to this. I mean, that will ultimately be the, maybe what determines it. Does Cody take this as such an offense that he'll look at it as a straight up heel turn? And how does Randy himself, does he talk differently? Does he act differently? Does he go on to attack other innocent people in all of this? So that'll be interesting. As far as a way to get people talking about this main event that we just found out about, last week, I thought they did a good job here. This felt like the type of angle you would expect for a WrestleMania main event, at least for one of the nights, right? So I quite enjoyed all of this.
And to me, I enjoyed it too. Even if the future direction isn't absolutely clear. In fact, I kind of enjoy that it's not absolutely clear. And it really did feel like someone hit the accelerator at the end of this show, because, as I mentioned, up to this point, it felt like a kind of a nothingy story. It didn't really bring us too much forward toward WrestleMania story-wise until this closing angle.
Yeah. Of course, with Orton and Cody, they benefit from having a shorter window because of all the history that they've had, and also because of all the constant teases they've had over the years of Cody or Randy, looking jealous of Cody subtly in the background. And I assume all these things will be brought up. I look forward to them digging into a lot more of their history together. You barely scratched the surface in all of this. So they have 5 weeks left to tell the story, and I hope they do a strong job, because I would say they certainly started off really well tonight.
And even if they continue in the vein they did tonight, I could see the WrestleMania live crowd cheering for Randy and booing Cody.
Oh yeah.
Earlier in this show, there were some boos for Cody. Just in his, you would hear sort of the through noise from the crowd in some backstage segments. When he made his entrance, there wasn't so much.
Yeah.
It was more of the conventional Cody reception, but. Yeah, I think all of that could be fascinating too, just exactly how they're positioned.
What the segment tells me is that I don't sense that the company is flirting with the idea of a Cody Rhodes heel turn. This was Cody placed in what looked to be a very sympathetic role right?
Yeah.
So to me, like, it wipes away that possibility of Cody being maybe more of a straight up heel in this program
Yeah.
against a Randy Orton. What I think it will be well, a harder edge Randy Orton that maybe some will be able to perceive as a full on heel, taking on a baby face Cody Rhodes, and then ultimately it's kind of up to the crowd how they react on the night of.
Agreed. Yeah. But I think Randy is getting a good reception. Probably.
Yeah, very likely. All right, so those are our thoughts on SmackDown tonight. Yeah, I agree with you. Maybe, really strong closing. Content-wise, I thought the matches were not bad. There's certainly maybe nothing so blow-away, but we are getting our pieces here. Looks like Julia and Tiffany Stratton is a program. Maybe Trick Williams and Sami Zayn, and then you've got Nick Aldis. Drew with Jacob Fatu, which we'll see at least the first chapter of next week.
Yeah.
All right. So those are our thoughts on SmackDown. What did you guys think about the show? As always, leave a comment either on the YouTube video itself or go to forum.postwrestling.com where all of our patrons can leave feedback that we will read in the XL edition of the show, which is coming up right now in the Post Wrestling Cafe.